Welcome back, everybody. This is Breaking Down Security. Hello, gentlemen, ladies, aliens, people from another planet.
You talking to me? What?
No, not you. I was trying to be as inclusive as possible to our listeners and our audience of growing, breaking down security maniacs.
I would have never figured we'd have this many listeners, but yes, apparently we're doing something right.
We are a rabid group of people and rabid fans of InfoSec. Welcome. We are back again this week with another topic of interest. Apparently, we're doing pretty well last week with our SANS Top 20. We did 12 and 13. If you haven't heard that, please give that a listen. This week, we are going to discuss, we don't like to talk about things in the news, but this is kind of one that we did last year, and we thought, well, we might as well do it again this year. It's the Verizon PCI data breach report.
Hey, don't knock on it. I mean, I would recommend it that everybody read this because it does have some good information on, security as a whole, how we're doing with compliance, that kind of thing. It's got some good points.
Isn't this the same industry-wide report that kind of shows from one company how we're doing?
From one company's perspective, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how inclusive it is, to be frank. It's based upon their customers, both post and pre-breach, right?
Yes. Their post-breach customers hire them to do, post-breach assessments, right?
Forensic investigations. So after somebody's been breached, they go, "Please, Verizon, save us." And then they're like, "Okay, well, we'll come in and save you. You probably should have used our QSA product ahead of time, and you wouldn't have been breached."
That may be true. And then, of course, they have their PCI auditor.
Yeah, they're QSA
section.
folk. Yeah, they're
yes.
Qualified security assessors or what have you.
So this document, I don't know how many pages it is. It's pretty long, but it kind of incorporates data from those two aspects of their company.
Yep. It's 845 pages. No, I'm just kidding. It's not 845. It's like 85, 80, 83, 82
okay.
pages of general awesomeness.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah, we're not going to get down in the weeds like we did last year and spend a whole 30 minutes on it. We're going to just go over the high points and then discuss some key takeaways that we had from it. One of the points of the report, they mentioned that Canada back in 2008 went to chip and pin, or EMV, which has been very, very slow in coming here in the United States because it's only been in the last few years that credit card data breaches have really come to the fore. I mean, first, of course, it was Home Depot, Target, of course. There were some, other ones.
I think the point is, I'd like to bring up this point. Everybody says we should move to chip and pin because it helps us with fraud and all this stuff. And we have politicians on board, and it's going to cost a huge amount for businesses to make the move to chip and pin processors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's, that second factor, and, there's a pin, and that'll make it better because the pin and you aren't going to share it with people. Yeah.
So, according to the report, since Canada did move to chip and pin, payment card fraud has actually increased in that company. Now, why is that?
Shocked. I'm so shocked. Well, there are different kinds of card fraud. I mean, you have the card fraud where somebody just writes down the number and, later on punches it into the terminal at Target or whatever and buys $500 worth of junk. Or you have what's called the card not present fraud. So, you have it's different where you
yes.
Okay, so
yes,
I'm saying
different.
with the card that's not present, I mean, The way that it used to be is you could go in and put another transaction in with the same card, and that's not necessarily what I would consider card not present. Card not present fraud is when you go on Amazon and you type the number in yourself and
Right.
you buy something that way, or you order a pizza and you have a card number. They're not
So
going to.
yes,
They're going to ask you for the CVV. They're going to ask you for the 16 pin. They're going to ask you for the expiration. If you go into Target with your EMV card, you put it in the little terminal. You have to type a pin in, and then you
yeah,
can buy something.
right. So card present fraud has actually decreased, but card not present fraud has increased even more than the decrease in card present fraud. So yeah, it as far as total fraud goes, it looks like it didn't do anything.
Yeah,
It just costs a lot of money.
So they've moved to more online retailers,
Right.
little mom and pop shops with boutique type websites where you can go in and you can buy things off their website. They don't have the ability to use that second second factor, the PIN part. I know that Visa has tried something. I know I have Navy Federal Credit Union for my card, and what they've tried to do for online stuff is when you buy something, they do a secured by Visa. So you click submit, and one of the parts for the credit card auth is a little pop-up. It says secured by Visa. You have to basically either put in a PIN or your account number or like your date of birth or some other additional authorization saying that you are who you say you are before it will actually go through. Now, ironically enough, I can block that with a JavaScript blocker so that I don't have to worry about that. Or if it doesn't pop up, it'll automatically go away after a few minutes. I've never actually put anything into the Secured by Visa because I didn't trust it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
not
that's
nice,
that's
but yeah.
one thing that came out of the well, yeah, it is nice for you, I guess, since you don't have to use it. You don't trust it.
Nice for the bad guys because they don't have to use it either. If it can be bypassed.
Right. I guess it makes people feel good sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not gonna hit every point in this report, like you said, but there are some highlights. And they say of all the data breaches that Verizon has investigated over the last 10 years, not one has been compliant at the time of the breach. So my question is anyone fully compliant?
Well, they
Really?
are. They are when they get their rock. The data was
Well,
signed. They were
according to their
compliant.
QSA, they're compliant, but maybe he
Exactly.
missed something. Maybe they hid something from him.
Well, as Bob has told me in the past, dealing with QSAs, they sometimes look at certain parts of the PCI requirements more strictly in certain years. Like for some years, it's all about authorization. It's all about, account privilege and stuff like that. Another year, it may be how well are you doing in your logging, and they're fastidious about your logging. Your
Yeah.
vulnerability management another year. So, you might be compliant on the logging or on the password or section 8 in the DSS 1 year, and you may be compliant, quotey fingers, but you may be deficient in another section because they didn't touch on that one as well as they should have.
I look at compliance as, especially PCI, where and those compliance frameworks that are even tougher, like indictments. Hey, you can indict a ham sandwich, right? Is what they say.
If you get the right
So
lawyer, I'd imagine
if
so.
you've
Yeah.
yeah, if you've got the right QSA, he can find you uncompliant, non-compliant with PCI.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
just how
However
strict
much
he
of a
is.
stickler they want to be on something.
Yeah. So big surprise there.
Yeah.
No one at the time of the breach has been compliant. Well, you can look and find something that they're not compliant on and call them non-compliant. So I don't really, I think it's much ado about nothing. It's just another point that they like to bring up.
It's like market speak. It's if you're compliant, then you're not going to get breached, is what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
That's what they're making it sound like. That as long as you're fully compliant, you will not be breached. But as we've seen in the report, you can be compliant 1 year and then the next year be totally out of compliance.
Yes. So that's what they say. 2/3 of companies fall out of compliance after first becoming compliant.
Now,
I think the way this happened is companies get complacent after their initial PCI certification. They say, yay, we're certified. Now we're doing good. Now you know, we just keep going the way we're going and we're going to make it next year. And then
yep.
they find out later that they really didn't put in a robust framework
Well,
of,
it's that moment in time thing. And when they were compliant, they were great, but then they upgraded systems. They added additional hardware. They've added additional technologies like a web proxy or additional new firewalls. Like they've taken out their old Cisco junk and put in new Palo Alto or Blue Coat stuff, you know. But they didn't go through the necessary hardening and logging and access possibilities. So last year, yeah, they were good to go, but now they've got this new Palo Alto box that
yeah,
is, routing all their traffic, and then they didn't do what was necessary to get it up to PCI compliance.
yeah, or they lost employees and didn't go through the process of getting rid of all their accounts and stuff. So they didn't have those
That's right.
processes and procedures in
That's
place
right.
that can, you know, work to their benefit long term.
Or they had the processes in place, but they weren't following them. So if you're following like a CMMI model, you might be at a level 2 on that. You've got the process in place. You know the people who are having to do it, but it's not being done on a regular basis, which would put you up to a level 3, which is what everybody wants to do. You may have, your term, you have to have a termination process and access removal process in place to become PCI compliant. But if you're not following those things, then you're, later on when you actually show that you're compliant, you can't actually say you are compliant.
Yeah, this is where ITIL helps, right?
Ah, look at you. I hope that in the future we can have somebody on to discuss ITIL and how it aligns information security concepts with business need.
That would be awesome.
Yes, it would
Okay.
in fact be awesome.
So moving on, they say that no company that was breached was compliant with requirements 6 or 10. So what are 6 and 10, you might ask? Well, requirement number 6 is system hardening, vulnerability management, and change management.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Wow. So if you don't harden your systems, if you don't patch your systems, if you don't find out what changes in your environment, that's a big hit
And
on not only your PCI compliance, but it leads you more susceptible to breaches. Hey,
yep.
if you don't patch, there's vulnerabilities out there, no doubt.
Or documenting changes that do occur and making sure that you have an audit trail for your changes. Yeah.
And what is requirement 10? Logging and log monitoring. Big surprise there. Hey, you know, got to log. I mean, we've been preaching this for the past year. Got to log everything and got to monitor on those logs. If you don't do that, 2 things happen. Number 1, you're not aware of when a breach occurs.
That's right.
Okay. If you're not monitoring those logs. And number 2, if you don't log, obviously you're not going to be able to find out how the breach occurred once somebody, third party, calls you up and say, hey, you've been breached. Well, you're not going to find out how.
That's right.
Because you're not logging.
Yep. And as friend of the show, Michael Goff, Hacker Hurricane, says, if you have any kind of malware infection, your logging can always help you in alerts and finding those things out. So that's why logging is also another very important reason why you want to be doing so.
Yep.
So
it's one of the critical controls that we've talked about.
Yep. So something from the report that came out was one of the criticisms of PCI was that focusing on compliance validation doesn't really, it distracts you from achieving genuine security.
Right.
Most companies, who follow the DSS, for most companies, the DSS, useful baseline, and that validation is not an assurance of security. Not being compliant is pretty much a guarantee that you're not secure. It's like
how many times have you heard, dang it, we got to focus on security, not this crazy compliance. How can we secure this organization if all we're focused on is compliance?
I'm pretty sure they've been listening to the podcast because I believe we have said that compliance is not security. But, having no compliance means having no security. That's a deep thought.
Dramatic pause.
That's a
Dramatic
deep
pause.
thought. Yes, exactly, exactly, sir. So another thing I didn't know is that there are some states now that are actually integrating the DSS standard into state law.
Oh.
Yeah. There are, in 2007, Minnesota enacted a law prohibiting the retention of payment card data, but they actually make reference to the DSS standard, which I believe in 2007 was version 1, maybe. 2009, Nevada incorporated the standard into state law, requiring compliance of merchants doing business in the state with the current DSS, and actually shields compliant entities from liability. That's interesting because, as you said earlier, anybody who was breached was not compliant.
That's right. According to Verizon, yes.
Yeah, according to Verizon. So if Verizon investigates somebody in the state of Nevada, they're not going to find somebody who was compliant with PCI.
Right.
Interesting. And in 2010, of course, Washington State, Washington State up here, incorporated the standard into law. Unlike Nevada's laws, entities are not required to be compliant, but compliant entities are shielded from liability in the event of a data breach. Again,
oh, nice.
Well, yeah. So if Amazon gets breached, as long as they're PCI compliant, they're not going to have to suffer damages due to liability.
Now, you think,
I'm just using them as an example. They've not been breached, as far as I know. But yeah, that's one of the big companies here in the Washington State area that I know of.
Yeah, that was just a random company you threw out there. Right?
Yeah, there's another one in Redmond that I just thought of now, but we don't know about them if they've ever been breached either. So
you think companies do QSA shopping? Hey, we need to get this company. They got a reputation for being lenient a little bit, because I don't know if we can get by this year.
I think price is a factor. I think just like doing a pen test, you want the best pen test that you can get for $250, or you want the best QSA that you can get, but you don't want to spend $1 Brazilian to get it. So if given the choice between, say, a Big Four or Bob's PCI service, and Bob's PCI service guarantees you a rock, are you going to go with Bob, or are you going to go with one of the Big Four?
I'm going to say, hey, let's go with Bob so we can focus more on security, get rid of this compliance stuff, get that over with.
Now,
right?
That is the way that I would imagine that it should sound, but in the management view frame, I'm hearing I'm guaranteed a rock and I only have to pay $2,000. I'm not hearing, well, let's do what's necessary to be more secure and just go with the guy who's only going to give us a cursory look. I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing the pessimist side who's thinking, yeah, we're going to save $1 Brazilian and still be quote unquote compliant.
Yeah. I'm afraid there's probably a lot of that going around, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, do you think it's because that the Big Four know that they're doing, they're going to be harder on companies because their reputation is on the line, right?
That's true.
Because
PCI is hard, and they're going to find stuff no matter what.
True. And if their reputation is, who was that? Who was it that did the Target one? That was what, TrustWave or something? I seem to remember.
I do not know.
Yeah, well, I have to look them up and find out. Target's QSA. Anyway, so what else did we want to talk about in the? They have some scenarios in there, and they talk about specific companies. But I didn't want to go through that again like we did last year because it was all about Target and stuff. I'm sure a certain entertainment company that makes movies is involved in one of the scenarios. So it was TrustWave. PCI auditor TrustWave was sued by banks. That was March 26, 2014. Dark Reading said that. Okay.
So, I think it's a good read for people in our industry just to see how the trends are, what's going on, what it takes to, or what an audit does for companies, and what they need to focus on, that kind of thing. Requirements 6 and 10, maybe you should highlight those more. Some strategies to take. They've got some good points.
Yeah, what surprised me was the amount of money that is being hit by the bad guys. Several $trillion worth of credit card. I think it was like what was it, 1 or 2 trillion in debit card, which is scary because debit card, that's real money. I mean, when I get paid, my bank gives me a debit card so that I can access my checking account directly. If somebody takes your debit card and,
That's cash.
that's real cash, man. That's $3.1 trillion in real cash, not credit card, which is fake money, Back in the day, fake money, I'd say fake money. But back in the day, it was like, you want to use a credit card because at the time you were only liable for up to $500 of the purchases on the credit card. And, when it happened, the banks were like, okay, yeah, we'll just give it all back to you, whatever. Debit card, forgive me if I'm wrong. And if I am wrong, please let me know on, hashtag BreakSec on Twitter or hit up our Facebook page. Let me know, because I've always thought that if you got hit with a debit card and somebody wiped out your debit card, they didn't have to give you that money back. The banks weren't required to. Now they would, obviously, because it's, the people raise a stink and, banks don't care or whatever. But it seems to me that debit card, I would not want to be using my debit card at all for any purchases anywhere at any retailer, even if the retailer hasn't been breached.
Yeah, I had always assumed that debit card was cash. I think that's true.
Yeah, that sucks. $3.1 trillion of debit card stuff. And then the electronic methods, $2.2 trillion of electronics. That's like PayPal or I would give us like mobile payments. So, that's Apple Pay, any of the other ones that have come out with any new, mobile payment method. Google Wallet, I know has been around for a while. That's crazy. So that's almost $10 trillion worth of money in the U.S. alone.
They talk about cryptocurrencies too.
Yeah, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, those kinds of things. I know that, when I did the prior podcast with my friend Jared Goldstein, we talked about cryptocurrencies, and this was a couple of years ago. So we were, they were kind of like oh wow, there's this thing that people are using for money, ha ha ha. It's like a commodity. People are using it, and that was back when Bitcoin was like $20 or $30, and we didn't think it was going to go anywhere. Well, apparently it's gaining some legitimacy. I mean, Amazon takes it. I want to say Dell was taking it at one time, if they don't, and then Sears and
Target
was taking it. Yeah. So Subway also takes it. So there's other retailers that will also. I believe the IRS was taking it at one point. They might actually not seize it as part of a criminal investigation, but they would actually take it as payment for your taxes and what have you. So yeah.
Wow, they would take a tax-free currency as tax. That's kind of
yeah. I thought
weird.
I know that I saw that in a news article. I'll have to hunt that up and put that in the show notes.
All right.
So I think the other interesting thing they saw in the report was the rise of the mobile payment systems, which, I mean,
yeah,
for me, I don't use them because I don't have an iDevice for Apple Pay. I have used Google Pay, the NFC chip, where you just, I have bought things on a vending machine with an NFC chip, basically bang it against the thing. It works really well. I mean, they do put I think it was at Xerox, they had some vending machines there in the break room. You could go and use yours if you wanted to.
Isn't there a service charge?
Well, they put so if I remember right, in the break room there, it was like you buy a soda and it was for $5, but then they would put a hold of $5 on your card and then charge you the 75 cents or whatever. It was like if you go to a gas station, they'll put Shell will put like $125 charge on your card if you buy $20 worth of gas. I didn't hate it because it would just come back and tell you, okay, yeah, your card went through and we're going to charge you this much. So with Apple Pay, though, from what I understand, it's basically turning your card or your phone into a card, which I don't want a $500 credit card, frankly. You know, I haven't used them in a while because I don't really see any benefit to it yet.
Yeah, but you put your biometric thumbprint on it, so nobody could steal it.
You're a sweet kid, Mr. Betcher. You're a sweet kid. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the biometric stuff either. So, some of the initial takeaways from the report, they said data is still not being adequately secure, which it can be. People are still storing credit card information, not necessarily securely.
I'm shocked.
You should be, sir. You should be. Yeah. They're, is it necessary to store that credit card information in the first place? Is there another way of storing that data?
Well, you could tokenize it, right?
I'm sorry?
Tokenize the credit card information. So instead of, like say your MasterCard or whatever, instead of giving me the credit card number, you will give me a token representing that credit card number.
Isn't that just
so I keep the token and that represents that card, but I don't need to know the card number. So that takes me out of scope.
Isn't that just a fancy hash?
No, it doesn't have to be. It can be a random number that's linked to the real card number on some database in your system. So you give me the token, I use the token, I tell you, hey, I charged so and so much money on this card, but it's not a real card, it's a token. Okay. You say, okay, well, let me take that token and see what card number it is for, and then you say, it's for X card, so I'm going to charge that one.
Okay, so I'm not giving you the credit card number. I'm going to give you a token, but at some point, somewhere, someone has your credit card in a database, whether it be your bank, Visa.
That's right, but it's not me.
True. Okay, so yeah, Bob's filling station is not going to have your credit card somewhere in a system somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's kind of my takeaway to this whole thing is. In order to reduce costs for compliance, you can reduce your scope, and that gives you some things. You can reduce your risk. If you are breached for some reason, then like say you're using tokens, the thieves get your tokens. Yeah. Big deal. They're just random numbers. All right, they can't use them.
Well, is it a one-time token? I mean, is that
well, they come in many forms, but yeah, if they steal some random numbers. Good for them. Congratulations, you did it.
Well, I mean, if they steal your token, it's just the same as stealing your card, unless they have some kind of thing that's randomized, like an RSA thing or a Google Auth token, where it's changing every minute.
It depends on how they use the token. If they can hack into my system and use the token in the way that I use it, right? Interfacing with you, then maybe they have something. But if they just exfil those tokens and try to use them. Let's say they look like credit card numbers, but they're not. They try to use them in quote real life. They're not going to be successful. So, they may, I may get breached, but they've got random numbers, and it reduces my cost as well. I don't have to spend the money on all these controls that PCI would require. I don't have to get audited by a QSA. It just reduces my cost to take myself out of scope. Or if you're a larger company, you can take certain sections of your business out of scope, right? You can use jump boxes to access PCI environments instead of your physical laptop, right?
Yeah.
So that takes your laptop out of scope because it doesn't directly interface with the card environment.
Yeah. See, what I would like... And I was thinking about this while we were researching this. If you could have, say, a value, like you're saying, like a token, it changes on a regular basis. I go up to a retailer. I guess I could have it on my phone or my device, my iDevice. I put the phone up to the device, or I have the code on the phone and I can type it in. That would get sent to my bank or whatever. And then the next time I go to, say, another retailer, I can type in a different code if I want to, or I can type in the same code and it recycles every day or something. If somebody got my device, all they would have is a token that may or may not work after such amount of time. Maybe it only works for a minute. So I look at the code. Okay, it's an eight-digit code. Type. I'm good to go. In a minute, it doesn't work anymore. So even if Joe Bob at the restaurant that I just went to has my 8-digit code, in a minute, unless he has done the fraud in the minute that it takes for that window to occur, he can't make any more purchases. Even if he stored it in the pause terminal,
Yeah.
it gets sent off. The process, the transaction is good to go. They've got my money. They know that that's a valid transaction for that time.
Yeah, I think there's some similar implementations of that. For example, I have a Discover card, so I can go on to discover.com and get a temporary card.
Okay.
I believe I can expire it whenever I want, or I could use it at a certain place and it's good for one time, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so yeah, they offer that.
Yeah.
It's just a one-time credit card, so I use it once. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gives me a little bit of security, but if my credit card gets popped, I just get another credit card because I'm not liable for that. And I think that, we were talking before the cast, how fraud ultimately gets back to the consumer somehow. In increased costs that the merchant is charging, that kind of thing.
Yeah. You're gonna pay more for, say, cash advances from your card. If you're applying for a new card at, say, Bank of New York or Bank of America, you might have gotten a better interest rate, but because of a recent breach, they've changed their credit worthiness requirements. So instead of a 4% interest rate, you'll only get a 6% interest rate as a base. It's not really victimless. It's going to affect you whether or not you've been breached in a negative way, or it might take you might have to start being charged ATM fees if you use an out-of-network ATM. You may end up being charged up to $3 instead of $2 like you were before.
Right. Ultimately, it's all going to come back to the consumer in increased costs. So these breaches where somebody, or fraud, what did you say, $1 trillion or $2 trillion? I mean, that's all falling back on the consumer ultimately.
Yeah. Eventually, we're gonna pay for that. If even if the media doesn't mention that it's not a victimless crime. I used to think so, and then I, took a step back and realized that was not necessarily the case. So, I want to talk about something that bothers me in the report about. They said 69% of people lose confidence in a company. Hang on, let me read that directly here. I don't want to misquote that. 69%. Okay, so scroll. 69% of consumers would be less inclined to do business with a breached organization. That's pretty damning. That's 2/3 of people will not work or use a company. They're less likely to do business with that company after a breach. I want to find out how they get their numbers in this case, because I know that when you live in San Diego or you live in Seattle, you live in Austin, a metropolitan area, it is a lot easier to be less inclined to do business with a company. But in areas that are not as heavily populated, you don't have that option. Or if you do, you're going to have to put yourself out to do so. I know I grew up in a town of about 3,000 people. There was only one business that did one thing in that area. There was one hardware store. There was a Walmart or a McDonald's or a supermarket in this case. If that supermarket was breached and people said, "Oh, I don't trust them anymore. I'm not going to use them anymore," you could travel 40 miles before you had another supermarket.
Yep.
Now, that is I'm not saying that is a that is a real thing for the town I used to live in, and for most of rural America. For the most part, they're going to maybe not go to that place for a little while, but they're always going to come back. Target has not really suffered any ill effects from the stock market at post breach.
They
And
they still get business, and
they
yeah,
still
you're
get
right.
we still shop there. I mean, they've and you know, in hindsight, and I think you mentioned this a couple days ago, I would probably be more likely now to shop at Target because they've learned their lesson. They've gone and put controls in place to hopefully make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Yeah,
Um,
knowing what you know about infosec, um, yeah, they went through some pain after
yeah,
their breach. They put
yeah,
in controls to help to mitigate the risk going forward.
yeah,
So yeah, I'd be more likely to shop there because I know that they're more secure than they were before. Whereas
exactly.
somebody who didn't get breached, you don't know where they are. But again, this study, 69% of people, uh, what did you say, are less likely to shop there in the future. I really don't think that's true. I mean, you people have short attention spans. They're going to, oh, Target's on my way to work. I
Yeah,
always go there. I
yeah,
may not have gone there once or twice after the breach, but it's convenient,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, you know, if you're
I
gonna,
don't think I don't think it's going to change people's opinions of the shopping. I mean, Target may still have the stigma of being a Target, you know.
hmm,
They're always going to be known as the retailer that got breached, at least in our lifetimes, right?
sure.
But I don't think it's going to influence people's shopping habits.
Or if it does, it will only do it in the short term. You
Yeah.
know, and as seen by their stock price, they went down initially, and then they rebounded within a couple of months. You know,
Yeah.
they were back up to where they were. So yeah,
And
I
again,
had
if we've seen that this malware can pretty much hose up any company or any
sure.
organization,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And I'd like to point out, um, remember what I said in the combined episode we had with Defensive Sec, what my 2015 like prediction or whatever was. Do you remember what I said?
I want you to refresh my memory because I don't remember.
I said one word, and the word was malware.
Malware.
That's what I said.
Okay.
Okay, so then if you look at virtually all of the big breaches that we've seen, some component in that breach, what or malware was a component in that breach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, virtually every breach. And then even J.P. Morgan, you know how initially they said, well, yeah, we had this web server and someone hacked a VPN and they hacked the web server and used it to pivot into our production network and they stole all of our data, right? Remember that?
Yes.
Well,
Yes,
now
I do.
it's come out recently where they said, no, it really wasn't what we told you it was. Um, it was malware.
Was it sophisticated?
Oh, it was very
I love that
sophisticated. It was
word.
the
That's
most
my
sophisticated malware of the age,
yeah.
right
Yeah,
there.
I use that word now as my go-to when my wife asks me why I haven't done something. I was like, yeah, well, you know, I would have, but it's too sophisticated. You know, why didn't you load the dishwasher? It's too sophisticated. I can't. Yeah,
I
yeah,
had something come up and it was much more sophisticated than that dishwasher.
exactly, exactly. It's sophisticated to meet you or something. Yeah, it's. I love that word. That's going to be the word I think of 2015 for the infosec community. Yeah. So I'm done talking about PCI for at least a couple of 4 or 5 months.
Well, I was hoping we wouldn't focus on PCI, but more security controls in general, right?
Yeah, well, you
This
know
is
it
just a
is.
PCI thing, but you
Uh,
can apply these numbers or studies to
yeah, and
everybody.
the tactics and stuff they use are can be used across any effort. If even if you're not a PCI required group, if you're doing SOX or your SOC audit, you still need to do asset control management. Still need to do logging. You still need to make sure. So even PCI bleeds over into those other compliance frameworks and you know
Yep.
so even if you're not a PCI guy, monitoring, logging, that's all still a very important access control. That's all still a very important thing to implement and to make sure that you're doing at your organization. So, well, that's it. I'm done talking about the PCI report until next year. Maybe we'll have the Mandiant report, find out what's all up in that business, and
yes,
see
Mandiant.
how that's going. Yeah, Mandiant. So that was it for this week. Let us know. Give us some feedback on the Twitter, on the Facebook. We've gotten some we got some iTunes feedback. I like to appreciate. Send my love out to JM345 and IO:async:loop. I don't know if he's trying to put in a cross-site scripting thing there, but I appreciate them for putting some reviews on iTunes for us. That was much appreciated. I'd like to thank Podfish for seeing me yesterday at the Agora meeting. We were up here in Washington at the UW for the Agora meeting. Met him again for at the second Agora meeting. I actually met a lady named Catherine who has some knowledge on bioethicists and how information should be used. I don't have her last name and I didn't get her Gmail. So if she's listening to this, please get a hold of me because we'd love to have you on to talk about it. You can get a hold of us on the podcast at bds.podcast@gmail.com. I and Mr. Betcher are both on Twitter. I am at Brian Brake. He is at Betcher Pwned. And we have an official Twitter handle at BrakeSec, BRAKESEC. That's our official Twitter handle. You can also use the hashtag BrakeSec to contact and to continue the conversation we're having here with our Verizon PCI report. We're on iTunes. You can just search for Breaking Down Security Podcast that on Google or in iTunes. And that's it for this week. I've learned a lot. I think next year's PCI report will be a lot of the same. That is my prediction. More of the same. More of the same.
Go. Yeah.
Same SSDD, same different day. So, for Mr. Betcher and myself here at Breaking Down Security World Headquarters, thank you for listening. And come back next week and we'll have some more interesting security stuff to talk about. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.